All my life, I would have never imagined all of these movies and TV shows we have coming. Marv, I wouldn't say this unless I really meant it. The MCU's got to be the greatest thing I could have ever imagined. So was I. Huh? What? Huh? What? What's up, family? Follow Marvel here, and I can finally talk about Captain America Civil War. This is a movie that I've anticipated the most for the past 2 years, probably just as much as the first Avengers when that first got announced. So I had to wait a little while before I did the review to kind of come down off of my high after the movie so I could come to you guys with a pretty fair assessment of this movie. Fanboy alert, fanboy alert. Marv, why are you trying to act like you wasn't as geeked as I was? I don't know what you're talking about, but let's go ahead and get this review started. Alright, so as usual, I'm going to give you the good, give you the bad, give you my overall insights, and if you haven't noticed by now, this video would not contain any spoilers. So with that being said, let's go. So at the start of this movie, it's already getting you prepared for everything else that takes place. So it does a really good job with already pulling the audience in. They show some things going on with the Winter Soldier at the beginning, and overall, it's a really interesting scene, and it sets up for events to happen throughout the rest of the movie. So just already I'm interested, so already off to a good start. We then get introduced to our current roster of Avengers, if you haven't already known who they are by now. I like how you assume that everybody know who the Avengers are. Well, everybody who's kept up with the movie so far should know. Spoken like a true fanboy. This irritating motherfucker. Language. So, in classic Russo fashion, we get a pretty badass opening when they introduce the characters, and stuff is going down and leads to some other things, and basically that's what gets the ball rolling for this movie. The movie does a really good job at pacing the story as it goes along. It's not like just this whole big action fest of a movie like some superhero movies tend to be at times, but I just really like the fact that, like, with this movie, they are focusing not really so much as focusing on just the story, but definitely balancing a coherent story along with some really badass action. And I have to say that the action is very badass. The introduction to the newer characters, I think, was done really well. It didn't really seem like they just plopped them right in there. It really felt like a smooth transition of getting those characters into the main story. And even with all these characters around, it doesn't really take spotlight away from other characters too much, because obviously characters are put into this movie for a reason to help progress the story along, but it doesn't feel like they were just plopped in randomly and we just never see them again. There's a reason why they're there, and I have to give the Russo brothers props for that. And let me say, speaking of characters, I have to say that I love Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, aka the Black Panther. When T'Challa comes in, he has a very commanding presence, and his portrayal overall leaves an impression on people. I feel it does. He had a very stern demeanor, and he just had this thing about him. Like he carried himself as royalty, and I think the one thing they pulled off with this movie is that people are going to notice when this guy comes on screen. And it doesn't just apply when he's in costume. Even when he's outside of costume, he has a very strong demeanor about him. And I have to say, they did a really good job with that. We could say how many people probably could have played Black Panther before in the past or whatever the case may be. Dude did a great job. Yep, Wesley Snipes, Michael Jai White, among others. I mean, there's a long list of people who could have played Black Panther. Well, Marv, none of them were cast for the role, so get over it. I ain't gotta get over nothing. If I think somebody could have played a better Black Panther, then I would damn well say that somebody could have played a better Black Panther, you smug son of a bitch. Marv, language. I hate you. Now, let's talk about what everybody's biggest concern about this movie was. A lot of people was afraid that he was going to feel forced in this movie, and it just really served no purpose to be there. Either way it goes, they did a very great representation of Spider-Man in this movie. I made a video quite some time ago about Tom Holland being cast as Spider-Man and how I really had a good feeling about this kid playing Peter. And everything that I said in that video was 100% true. I really feel that Tom really captured the spirit of Spider-Man. He had the personality, he had the youth on his side. As Spider-Man, the jokes were there. Everything we know about Spider-Man took place in this movie from when he was there, and I loved every second of it.
Spider-Man 2 still considered the best one in the series, though.
I'm not going to get into the whole thing, which Spider-Man was better than that. That's going to be another discussion for another video, so don't even try to bait me into that, Marv.
It was worth a shot, though. Andrew Garfield.
And like always, the movie has humor in it that like I absolutely enjoyed. I really love the humor that they used in this movie, and like comic book fashion, they were able to stick with it, and the way it was done for the most part, I loved it. So far we got cool characters, we got a coherent story, we got great action, we have great story pacing. I have to say that there's a lot of good going for this movie. And one of the things I do want to bring up is the antagonist of the film, Baron Zemo. So if you're familiar with this character, you kind of know that it's a bit of a deviation from the source material when it concerns Baron Zemo. What I find interesting with the way that this movie was being played out, I really think that as far as the whole super criminal element to his character, that it wasn't really required with this story that they were trying to tell. Like, he comes off as real mysterious early on, but as the movie progressed, you kind of see what his motivation is. And I really felt that some people are going to complain that he really didn't do anything, but I just really feel that with his role that he played in this movie, I think it worked for this type of movie, and honestly, I can't complain about that at all. I actually like this character.
Don't Marvel usually have a problem with developing their villains in the movie?
Yeah, that can be said about a lot of the movies. I mean, all the movies aren't perfect, but for what they are, they do their job. So, I can't complain that much. So to segue into the next segment, let's go ahead and talk about the bad.
Or like he really gonna find something bad about the movie.
As much as I love this movie, there are probably 1, 2, maybe 3 things about the movie that I could say that I had a small gripe with, but compared to how good it was, it's very minuscule. One of the things that I kind of had an issue with is that I think with certain things were left a little bit ambiguous with certain characters and their motivations and why they did what they did. And I felt that as the movie went along, I thought they were going to explain that a little bit more, but they never really got around to it, I guess. And I don't know, I just felt that it could have been at least some resolution with, you know, certain characters before the movie ended. Now, going back to what I said about the humor, as much as I love the humor in this movie, I do feel that like in some places it kind of felt out of place. It wasn't to the point where I felt like it was like extra forced, but it just sometimes where I think that, you know, maybe just like on this particular situation, just dial back a little, but then again, you know, it's still trying to keep that whole feel of like an actual comic book, because, you know, for people that are like constant comic book readers, you know that wittiness and humor are basically a part of the comic book format.
Oh my goodness.
Marv, what's wrong with you?
You actually thought of something bad. I can't believe it. Way to go. You're not such a fanboy after all.
Marv, what part of fair review did you not get when we started?
Oh, you really trying to convince me that you didn't think this movie was perfect? You forget that we share a brain.
Moving on. So my overall assessment of this movie, I will have to say that so far, this has to be the MCU's greatest movie to date. I really feel this movie has everything it needs for a comic book fan or just a casual moviegoer could want. And I really feel that you would be doing yourself a disservice if you did not go and see this movie in theaters. So with that being said, this movie gets a very marvelous score of 9 out of 10. there's hardly anything bad I can say about this movie. It was just a very awesome, fun movie. I can't wait to see what they do next. We got Doctor Strange coming on later this year. Then, of course, we got Guardians and Spider-Man next year. Man, God, we got a lot going for us as nerds and comic book, enthusiasts and everything. This is the best time to be alive if you're a comic book nerd. That's all I gotta say.
Oh boy, the fanboy's starting to rise again.
Whatever, Marv. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you saw the movie, let me know what you thought. Post what your thoughts were down below. Of course, I'll respond because I always check up on that like every chance that I get. More than likely, I would do a spoiler review either sometime this weekend or going into the next weekend because, again, I'm still contemplating on seeing the movie for a third time. So, but anyway, either way it goes, more than likely I would do so. So anyway, as usual, go ahead, like, subscribe, all those wonderful things, and I will check you guys to the next video. So until then, keep following my advice to go nerd, but nerd responsibly. This is Fallen Marv.
And I'm Marv, and we're out.
Marv, what are you doing? I'm supposed to say that.
Don't let your draws ride up in the nether region. I did it for a reason.
And Marv, what reason is that?
To remind the viewers of something?
Oh, Marv, you could have just said something. Anyway, guys, remember, this is a Marvel movie. Stay your butts in the seats when the credits start. Do not leave. 8 years of Marvel movies and people are still leaving during the credits. I mean, come on, think, people. Like, God, 8 years of movies and people still don't